I want to tell you about a group of warriors whose beards were so legendary they named themselves after them, and then built a kingdom that outlasted empires. When Rome's western half collapsed, dozens of tribes poured into Italy, like water filling a broken vessel. Most we remember: Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Franks. But one group, the Lombards or Langobards, carved out something different. For over 2 centuries, they didn't just conquer Italy, they transformed it, and were transformed by it. This is their story, from Scandinavian myth to Italian throne to Frankish footnote. Let's go back to the beginning. According to their own legends, written down centuries later, in the Origo Gentis Langobardorum, the Lombards came from an island called Scadanan, probably Scandinavia. By the time Roman historians like Tacitus were writing in the 1st century CE, these fierce, independent clans were already living along the lower Elbe River in northern Germany. They weren't a kingdom yet, just loose confederations of warrior families who shared gods, customs, and a talent for survival. Over the next few centuries, they drifted south. By the 400s CE, they'd reached Pannonia, modern-day Hungary and Austria, where the Roman world was unraveling in slow motion. In Pannonia, the Lombards weren't isolated anymore. They fought alongside and against other tribes: Gepids, Heruli, Ostrogoths. They learned from the Romans. They began centralizing power under charismatic war leaders, juices, and eventually under kings. One king in particular, Alboin, would change everything. In 568 CE, Alboin led his people into northern Italy. But this wasn't just an army, it was entire households, families, craftsmen, livestock. The peninsula was weak, hollowed out by decades of war between Byzantines and Goths, ravaged by plague. The Lombards didn't so much invade as pour into a vacuum. They took Pavia as their capital and spread across the north. But Alboin's kingdom was fragile. The duchies, regional power centers, remained largely independent, loyal more to themselves than to any central throne. Unity was more aspiration than reality. So here's the thing. The Lombards could have stayed tribal warlords, but they didn't. Over the next 2 centuries, something remarkable happened. They Romanized. They adopted Latin as the language of administration. They codified their tribal customs into written law, blending Germanic tradition with Roman legal principles. Many converted from their old gods to Christianity. Lombard kings began to see themselves not as barbarian chieftains, but as legitimate successors to Rome itself. The transformation wasn't instant, and it wasn't total, but the Lombards evolved from raiders into rulers, from destroyers into administrators. But ambition has consequences. As Lombard kings looked south toward Rome and Byzantine-controlled territories, they triggered a geopolitical crisis. The Pope, threatened by Lombard expansion, made a calculated move. He invited the Frankish king Charlemagne to intervene. In 774 CE, Charlemagne swept into Italy, besieged Pavia, and ended the Lombard kingdom. Just like that, over 2 centuries of history collapsed. The Lombards didn't vanish. They were absorbed into Charlemagne's empire. Their laws and customs woven into the fabric of medieval Italy. From Scadanan to the Elbe, from Pannonia to Pavia, from myth to monarchy to memory. The Lombards remind us that collapse and creation are 2 sides of the same coin. The Lombards are often forgotten, overshadowed by flashier empires and more famous tribes. But their story is a perfect case study in adaptation. They arrived as outsiders and became insiders. They destroyed and then built. And when they fell, they didn't disappear. They became part of the culture they once conquered. In a way that's more lasting than any crown. If you found this fascinating, let me know what other forgotten kingdoms you'd like us to explore. History is full of them.